Hello and welcome to the JSource International Reporting Bureau Weekly Wrap-Up, where we follow Canadian coverage of international news. I'm Adriana Jung, coming to you from Humber College. Here's a look back at what's been happening around the world this week. Canadian journalist Mohamed Fahmy's release status in Egypt sees Canadian headlines throughout the week. Last week, we told you about speculation regarding Fahmy's pending release in Egypt. Nearly 2 weeks ago, the Egyptian Foreign Ministry said it would be within days. However, on Sunday, Egypt announced that a retrial would be set for Fahmy later in the week. The Globe and Mail ran a front-page story headlined "Ottawa Seeks Answers on Fahmy's Retrial." The Toronto Star and the National Post also led their international coverage with news of the retrial. Fahmy's retrial commenced on Thursday and ended with his release on bail. CBC ran a report on Thursday with an embedded tweet from foreign correspondent Sasha Petrusek featuring Fahmy's fiancée making a statement. He was to remain in prison until Saturday. However, it was reported the next day that he was suddenly released. All major Canadian news outlets covered this update. Boko Haram garnered attention from Canadian media on Tuesday as the extremist group's presence continues to expand in the region. The National Post featured a report by the Associated Press titled "Car Bomb Explodes in Niger as Boko Haram Extremists Set Up Attacks Outside of Nigeria." CBC also ran a report from the Associated Press with the headline, "Boko Haram Abducts 8 Girls in Cameroon." The continuing violence by the extremist group has already postponed the Nigerian presidential elections originally set for this weekend. Ukraine also took the spotlight this week in Canadian media. On Monday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel met with U.S. President Barack Obama at the White House ahead of peace talks set for later in the week. The two leaders pledged alliance and vowed to work together in resolving the conflict in Ukraine. The National Post and the Globe and Mail both kicked off their international coverage on Tuesday with the meeting between Merkel and Obama. Wednesday saw more coverage of the violence in Ukraine. All major news outlets focus on the pending peace talks in the war-torn nation. However, on Thursday, after 16 hours of talks between the leaders of Russia, Germany, France, and Ukraine, a ceasefire agreement was finally reached. News outlets in Canada were buzzing once negotiations concluded. The Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, and CTV all reported on the peace deal. The National Post, however, stepped away from other Canadian news outlets on Thursday. It ran a report instead from the Daily Telegraph on 3 young Muslims who were shot dead in North Carolina. The headline read, "Hate crime probed in killings." Speculators say the shooting was based on the religious beliefs of the victims. Well, that's it for this week. For these stories and more, visit us at jsource.ca or follow us on Twitter. Join us again next Friday for your weekly Canadian international news coverage. I'm Adriana Jung with the JSource International Reporting Bureau at Humber College.